Southern Appalachian Mountains are the oldest mountains in the world, according to geologists. Some of the most beautiful also. They're the highest peaks there are in the eastern United States. The most highest around the Smoky Mountains, western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. North Carolina claims right to the top three high mountains, Mount Mitchell, Mount Craig, and Clingman's Dome. On Clingman's Dome, they have to kind of share that because the state line of Tennessee's right at the top of it. There's a mountain in Avery County, North Carolina called Grandfather Mountain. They say it's the oldest mountain of all of them. These mountains used to be up to the heights like the Rockies are now. They tell us the Rockies are the youngest. And as settlers get a little bit more restless, they start moving in towards the mountains. First, almost impassable, they find the way through the gaps and passes and come into the mountains and find even a more beautiful land. They begin to meet the natives here, the Cherokee. They've been here longer than recorded history. More and more come. As we approach, we go through a war. The Revolutionary War, become our own country instead of 13 colonies. We're now 13 states. Things continue to grow in the West here as we go through the 1700s, 1800s. It was in 1700, after the Revolutionary War, a little place in western North Carolina was incorporated known as Morristown. 4 years later, its name changed to Asheville in honor of Governor Samuel Ashe. In 1797, after Asheville was incorporated into a small town, half-acre lots were sold for $2.50. Well, that's a great bargain, isn't it? Pretty good even back then. Look what the inflation is now. Asheville began to grow and continued to grow. In 1828, they completed a parallel road along the French Broad River into East Tennessee. This opened up a good trade route with East Tennessee and Kentucky. They started driving herds of hogs, sheep, and cattle into the area to trade with. Western North Carolina continues to grow. A lot of things take place. We're going to fast forward a little bit. War of 1812, Indian Removal Act, the war between the states. Let's kind of settle in on about the 1880s right there. Hey, guess what? 1884 is when my great-grandma was born, Avery County, North Carolina. Why do I mention that? She's really the one who raised me. In 1888, George Washington Vanderbilt accompanied his mother on a visit to the Asheville area, and they're staying at the original Battery Park Hotel. He returns in 1889 because he fell in love with the area. While he was so good, he thought this is the most beautiful place he had ever seen. It was his intention to build a large country mansion here. Once he was here, he started buying land, 7,000 acres to begin with. Finally acquired approximately 125,000 acres. Also in 1889, February of 1889, Asheville started a streetcar service, and an electric streetcar, one of the first in the state. Only Charlotte and Wilmington had them later. Bringing with him Richard Morris Hunt, pretty much the family architect. He already designed and built several homes for the Vanderbilt family. Frederick Law Olmsted, famous for Central Park, to work his garden, as he wanted a formal garden. The project was so large it even required a railroad to carry the supplies and the workmen into it. This brought people from all over the world to work on it, craftsmen, skilled craftsmen. While Mr. Vanderbilt was concentrating on his home, I do not think he realized what he was doing for the community and the good that would be for it. 1892, author George Hagan published a book, Health Resorts in the South. Naturally, he included a chapter about Asheville, North Carolina, where he found out Pleasant Mountain air. At the time of publication of this book, one of the worst diseases of the country, well, the world, was taking place at the time, tuberculosis, known to have killed as much as 7 million people per year. Well, the way to settle this was bed rest and time spent in the mountains. All back in 1871, there was a villa in Asheville, the nation's first sanitarium, originally located in Kenilworth area, later moved to Haywood Road and College Street. Asheville was quickly becoming a hub of medical tourism. At its peak, it had 130 boarding houses and sanitariums. This eventually led to the arrival of E.W. Grove, whose impact on the city is present today. In the 1880s, malaria was taking the South by storm. A young pharmacist in Paris, Tennessee, was developing a reputation how his first wife, Mary Louise Moore, and his daughter Irma died from the illness. Quinine, a plant-based medicine that had a strong bitter taste, was known to help malaria, fevers, and chills. Desiring to make a more palatable taste, he created a lemon-flavored sweet syrup and marketed it as Grove's Tasteless Chill Tonic. Had a little label on it that said, "Children and adults, fat as pigs." Well, he sold over 1.5 million of them. He outsold Coca-Cola. 1897, Grove relocated to Asheville, North Carolina. Well, that's due to health issues, and by 1905, he's beginning to look around for development opportunities. The 1890s even bringing change across the whole country, even to today, from Asheville, North Carolina. Kind of started on the Biltmore estate. Let's get the word Biltmore. It's the last part of Vanderbilt, and the English word more means rolling hill upland country. Well, George Vanderbilt and Frederick Law Olmsted was taking a walk on part of a 7,000-acre forest area, and Olmsted, he advised him he needed to do some things about it. He didn't like the way they were cutting the timber and destroying other trees while they're cutting timber, the erosion caused by the way they were doing it, and advised Vanderbilt to get somebody to take care of that. Well, he found such a man in Gifford Penshaw, a young forester who had been educated in France, came there and took charge. Well, he had a little trouble in communicating with some of them. He didn't speak the mountain language, but he got through to some of the foremen, and they got through to the others. Well, a lot of people called it Vanderbilt's folly, but nevertheless, he was turning a tidy profit for selling lumber and railroad ties. Well, Vanderbilt had hired Penshaw in the spring of 1892. Well, in 1894, he found out about another large tract of land nearby and asked Penshaw to look it over. It's about 100,000 acres, stretched across the French Broad River, across into Mills River, the beds, Looking Glass Rock, and Mount Pisgah. Looking it over, he advised Mr. Vanderbilt by all means buy this land, and in 1895 he did it. 1898, President Theodore Roosevelt appointed Gifford Penshaw as director of the Forest Service. Well, what became the United States Forest Service? You'll see his work all across the country. That same year, Vanderbilt recruited Carl Alvin Schenck from Germany to come and take charge of his forest interest. With the following that Penshaw already started, he found students right there ready to learn. With financial aid from George Vanderbilt, he started the first school of forestry in the pink beds of Pisgah Forest. Schenck stayed with Vanderbilt till 1912 when he had a befuddle. Well, he just crossed the mountain and went to work over there for Champion Paper. The School of Forestry, later the University of North Carolina started one, Yale and others started. But in 1968, the United States government recognized it and made Pisgah Forest School of Forestry. It is now known as the Cradle of Forestry. You can stop in there at the pink beds of the Cradle of Forestry and still see the old school. In 1910, C.S. Alley bought him a car and started a taxi business. Why are we talking about a taxi way back then? Well, this is the taproot of what began as organized, conducted sightseeing tours in the mountains. Dr. E. W. Grove had big ideas in his mind for part of Asheville. He had already bought over 400 acres on Sunset Mountains, wanted to develop a community. He had also stayed in a lodge out in Yellowstone National Park while he was there, and he wanted to build one similar in the area. Well, he hunted for architects to design it for him, but he had a problem. He couldn't find the one that'd take it on. Finally gave up on architects and got his son-in-law, Fred L. Shealy, to design it. He wasn't an architect either. Anyway, they started construction in 1912. Had it finished and ready for occupancy July the 12th, 1913. Had 400 men working about 10 hours a day, 6 days a week to build that. Big old boulders carved out of Sunset Mountain up there and hauled in. 9 years after the trolley started in Asheville, in September the 15th, 1898, they organized into the Union, ATU Local 128. The trolley system continued to operate smoothly until 1913. Then the system came to an operational stop while the conductors went on strike for better wages. The company tried bringing in strike breakers, however, citizens of Asheville didn't like that too good. About 2,000 protesters run them back out of town. Strike breakers, you might want to call them something else, they left town. Next day, the trolley company conceded to the workers, or some of the workers, raised the minimum wage from 18 to 19 cents an hour. Trolleys began to roll again until 1926, went on strike again. Better wages still represented ATU Local 128, and they continued to represent the transit on. Matter of fact, I ain't belonged to 128 for 3 years. On March the 6th, 1914, George Vanderbilt died on the way to New York after an acute attack of appendicitis. Next year, Mrs. Vanderbilt sold approximately 87,000 acres of land to the U.S. government, which became the nucleus of Pisgah National Forest. This was following in line with what George would have wished for the people to enjoy the land and it be preserved. Also at this time, war was beginning to break out in Europe. Later this would be known as World War I. July the 16th of 1916, Asheville was flooded. French Broad River crested 17 feet above flood stage. After the devastating flood, people of southern Appalachian area get busy trying to recover and rebuild from it. A lot of devastation taking place. The rest of the country still going pretty much the same. The war is still going on in Europe. President Wilson's talking about American involvement in the White House. He's talking about America not being involved outside. A lot of people in the Appalachian Mountain area could not see us get involved in a European war. Defending our homeland, yes, but fighting for another area, no. As more European countries get involved in the war, it looks like we're going to be involved in it too. Actually started July the 28th, 1914, and the U.S. became involved April 6, 17. What became known as World War I ended November the 11th, 1918. Remember I told you a while back, a fellow C.S. Alley bought a taxi. Now he has a fleet of taxis, done quite well, and known as the Taxi Man. He now has enough to meet all the trains coming in into Asheville, keeping one at the Grove Park Inn pretty regular, and also the Battery Park Hotel, Vanderbilt Hotel, and a few in the street. He's beginning to grow his fleet. Well, also in 1917 and 18, things started changing more in Washington that would impact the whole country. December the 18th, 1917, a bill was introduced in Congress, passed in 1919 on January, and became law January 17th, 1920. That's the 18th Amendment. The 18th Amendment was prohibition. In other words, you cannot manufacture, transport, or sell alcoholic beverage of any kind. Well, this turned out to be a good thing for a lot of things. It was meant to do good for the country, but it made a lot of crooks wealthy. This is also a dream for the people in Southern Appalachians, the independent distillers. This was a real gift to them. You might know them better as moonshiners. The Roaring Twenties really brought change in. You had prohibition, women has the right to vote now. Electricity's coming in. By 1930, 68% of the homes have electricity. Then we're having to learn a new language. With prohibition, we learned a new word, speakeasy. Well, that's what you went to when you wanted to get your favorite drink at your watering hole. But you had to speak easy and have a password to get in. Also, we got a new sound. It's called jazz. New dances, too. People say, teach me the Charleston, the Foxtrot, the Lindy Hop. And, well, there's people trying to always get attention. You've got people sitting on flagpoles for days, weeks, and months at a time, get attention. And another new word we had to get used to is flappers. Well, that was young ladies that they had shorter hair, shorter dresses. Let's say they were just more adventurous. Also, another thing came about this time too. Big ticket items are those things you couldn't normally afford. Buy now, pay later. How good idea was that? Well, in ways it may have been okay. And yes, we even got Mickey Mouse now. Lumber companies had descended upon the southern Appalachians, especially western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee, bringing in skidders which were not efficient, tearing the forest up. With reckless cutting and knocking down more trees than they're harvesting, this caused a lot of erosion in the area too, which is devastating to the area. There's a lot of rain in the Smoky Mountains, about 86 inches a year. You may recall I mentioned Olmsted, Penshaw, Shank, how they would have a lasting impression upon the forest. People began to think about this, what they had learned. It's all right to log, but let's save the forest and have it for future use. Well, people in Tennessee wanted to make a national park. This idea had already come up in Asheville, North Carolina back in 1889, but it didn't quite make it. The idea of creating a national park became a whole lot more successful in the mid-20s. Most of the hard-working supporters in Asheville, North Carolina and Knoxville, Tennessee, surprisingly, the motorist clubs like AAA played a role in pushing the idea. They wanted to drive the nice new shiny cars through the scenic areas. Well, Tennessee Representative Ann Davis had introduced a bill in Congress about it, and in May 1926 it was signed by President Calvin Coolidge, providing the establishment of Smoky Mountain National Park and Shenandoah National Park. This allowed the Department of the Interior to assume responsibility, administration, and protection of the park. So as the Smokies had 150,000 acres to be purchased. Well, purchasing the land, a whole nother thing. Since the government was not allowed to buy land for national park use, well, the politicians boosting this, they became fundraisers. In North Carolina and Tennessee, they raised money with school kids, fund drives, what have you. By 1928, $5 million had been raised. North Carolina and Tennessee legislators also had put, well, as part of that too, they'd put $2 million each into it, and they gave them almost the money they needed. Rockefeller heard about this. John D. Rockefeller, he'd match every dollar there was. He did through his wife's Laura Spelman Fund, $5 million, given $10 million to start with. And by 1934, North Carolina and Tennessee signed 300,000 acres of land over to the National Park Service. As we've now learned a little bit about the creation of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, things are still kept alive here with ETWNC, Eat Taters and Wear Nice Clothes Freight Company. Really, it's East Tennessee, Western North Carolina. They're keeping everything moving for us, and things are continuing in the mountains. Roads and bridges being built, and Coca-Cola's got a new plant in North Carolina. Well, you look at the fleet of trucks got to keep it up, too. Well, a few little things happening here and there. Unfortunately, a streetcar had an accident between Asheville and Weaverville. On May the 12th, 1922, shortly after 7 o'clock, the Weaverville to Asheville car left. Coming the other way, somebody had switched the track for the Asheville to Weaverville car and put them both on a head-on collision course. Naturally, they were both going about full speed. They collided head-on. A.L. Ballou, the conductor on the Weaverville to Asheville car, was killed. There were 10 passengers on the Weaverville to Asheville car, most of them with minor injuries. This was the worst of the streetcar accidents they had had. Later that year, they totally cut off the Asheville-Weaverville run. Well, fortunately, it did not inconvenience the people too much. Marion Holcomb had already bought a bus. Well, now he bought another bus. He was already running a bus service between Weaverville and Asheville. This eventually became the Mars Hill-Weaverville bus line. Things are going pretty smooth in western North Carolina area around Asheville. Dr. E. W. Grove was thinking about the more real estate development. He's talking to Colonel Cox about acquiring the Battery Park Hotel and probably building a new one there. Earlier I mentioned C.S. Alley starting a taxi back in 1910. Well, C.S. Alley, along with a Birmingham man and his son, W.F. Bridges and J.D. Bridges, Birmingham will be starting a whole new company, Red Top Cabs Company. Already starting out $50,000 capital. Mr. C.S. Alley is the president of the company. W.F. Bridges is the secretary and treasurer and general manager. J.D. Bridges is the vice president. Bridges Sr. formerly was of the Birmingham Paper Company, vice president. He was also a member of the General Council of Commercial Travelers in the state of Alabama. As you can see, Mr. Bridges didn't waste no time in promoting Red Top Taxi. With his experience with the commercial travel in Alabama, he also arranged special trips and events. According to the Asheville Citizen, within 1 year, Red Top Cab had quadrupled their business. During this same time, Dr. E. W. Grove decided to buy and rebuild the Battery Park Hotel. He decided to lower the elevation of the hilltop there, and this meant a lot of dirt had to go someplace. Well, this filed into a gully running to the south of Asheville a little bit there, and this is now Cox Avenue. Grove built a 220-room hotel, 125 feet high. This building would have a lasting impact on the tourist trade around Asheville. Upon completion of the Battery Park Hotel, Dr. Grove started the construction of the Grove Arcade building right across the street. He had planned to build it 18 stories high. Economy style, we backed off a little bit. Unfortunately, he died January 1927, and the Grove Arcade building was finished in 28. He didn't live to see it be finished. They cut it back to 2 stories, but you can still add 16 more if you choose to do so. Mr. Bridges is now operating not only the Red Top Cab, but he's bought Yellow Taxi also. And he has Red Top Tours. Well, the Asheville taxi service is actually second best in the nation, only second to Yellow Cab of Chicago. He's now offering daily trips to Chimney Rock, Mount Mitchell, and the Pisgah Forest area, as well as running specialized trips other places around. In the mid-20s, a radio was a must-have in a household. In 1925, a radio station in Nashville, Tennessee started up by an insurance company. The call letters meant something then. WSM, We Serve Millions. They carried the Saturday night barn dance. One night, a radio announcer was getting ready to put them on. He said, well, we've been listening to opera. Now listen to some Grand Ole Opry. The Grand Ole Opera is the longest running show in history, 100 years old. I made it over there to help them celebrate. Same year, a radio station in Asheville, North Carolina opened up, sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce. When the call letters meant something, it was WWNC, Wonderful Western North Carolina, still going strong. The 20s overall was good to Western North Carolina. However, come October 1929, it hit the whole country with the bust of the market. Asheville was fortunate in many ways. They already had luxury hotels built, some tourist industry going, and industry had moved into the area. But nevertheless, it still took its toll on us. Local civic leaders in the area spoke with Cornelia Cecil, the daughter of the late George W. Vanderbilt, then her husband, John Francis Amherst Cecil, about opening the Biltmore House. They did so on March the 15th, 1930, with 300 people there to open up that daily trips. And on Wednesday and Saturdays, he had an overnight trip all around the Smokies and back. It would be until about 1934 they'd start construction on it. But he went around by almost Newport, Tennessee, down into Gatlinburg, stopping in Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge area, going on down the side there, around Cullowhee, Cates Cove, then coming up what's known as the Dragon Tail, around by Fontana, Nanahella, and back to Asheville. This was a 318-mile trip, a beautiful journey. In 1932, Franklin Roosevelt was elected President of the United States. With the so-called New Deal that would be implemented in 1933, the CCC became a great help to the Great Smokies and the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is on tap. What you're viewing is the CCC working on the highway on Newfound Gap Road between Gatlinburg and Cherokee. A lot of handwork done there. Boys, it made work for them. Some cases you see they had some almost modern machinery there, but at times it just reverted back to plain old simple horsepower. Yep, there they go. Giddy up. But then you bring in the heavy equipment too and get a little bit more done. With the CCC getting the road built, there's more opportunities for Red Top Tours to have through the Smokies. It cut that a 318-mile trip to a one-day trip instead of the 2 days they had it before. With the CCC completing the road now, this meant Mr. Bridges and Red Top Tours had a more open view for the people. Cut some travel time down a good bit too. He could run his 318-mile trip in 1 day instead of 2 days. W.F. Bridges' announcement of the new route went somewhat like this. The second of the Sunday tour series over the 318-mile route through the Great Smoky Mountain National Park will be conducted by Red Top Tours Company. It was announced yesterday by W.F. Bridges, president of the company. The new sightseeing bus will leave Asheville at Battery Park Hotel from the Red Top Tours Company at 8 o'clock and will return at 7 o'clock. Several passengers have already signed up yesterday for the trip, with a load of 12 is expected. The new bus have been specially constructed for sightseeing in the park area. The tops roll back, leaving an unobstructed view of the mountains. This route passes through the Nantahala Gorge, the Robbinsville area, Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and the new highway through the park from Tennessee into North Carolina. Sides of the mountains, summits of the Smoky Mountain, unrivaled by any one-day tour in America. Red Top Tours plan on running regular Sunday tours now. As we roll into the mid-30s, we see some changes coming, progression in many ways, but we also see the end of an era. On September the 6th, 1934, Carolina Power and Light Company promotes a party of the last day of the streetcars. As you can see from their poster, the party will be over at 4:30 in the afternoon when the last trolley returns from West Asheville. Trolleys should operate for 45 years at Asheville, started 1889 and ended up September 1934. That last day, 500 people showed up to celebrate. Although in the middle of the Depression, the mid-30s was a great time for western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. As development continued with the Blue Ridge Parkway, the Great Smokies. Asheville gets a new Union bus station too, April 1935. After all, you had carriers such as Atlantic Greyhound, Queen City Coach, Smoky Mountain Stages, Carolina Scenic, and ETWNC passing through. Approximately 3,000 people is coming through the Asheville area or to Asheville via bus. As you can see in this period, the Red Top's kind of fading away. It's becoming Smoky Mountain Tours. It's the same people and the same high-quality standards as it was before with Red Top. In 1936, the Depression was still going on. However, a lot of people still made their way to western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee to enjoy the beauty of the area. President Roosevelt had created the CCC, and they had built a road from Gatlinburg across into Cherokee, also working on the Blue Ridge Parkway in part of Virginia. So he decided he'd make a little trip down this way, press release says, with no political agenda. September the 8th, 1936. This is an election year. No political agenda. Press release indicates he'll be leaving Washington, D.C. that night, arriving in Knoxville, Tennessee, approximately 9 o'clock, a little before, having breakfast. Boarding a special bus provided by Smoky Mountain Tours. They have extra there just in case. Also, they're providing the car there, spare parts, mechanics, and then the car for the press. Well, the convoy heads to Gatlinburg, into the Great Smokies. They take a side trip at the top of the mountain, Newfound Gap, turn and go out to Klingman's Dome for a picnic. They travel on through Cherokee, continuing through Sylva, North Carolina, Waynesville, and into Asheville, where they'll overnight. Along the road, there were thousands of people waiting to see the president pass through. The motorway comes in through West Asheville, down Patton Avenue into Asheville, making his way up to the Grove Park end, where he'll overnight and meet with some others. He'll be meeting with Congressman Dalton, Senator Bob Reynolds. Next morning, leave the Grove Park end, coming back down Macon Avenue, Charlotte Street, to McCormick Field, where he'll make a speech from his car in the middle of the field. The place is jam-packed. There's estimated 20,000 people there to see him as he makes his speech to the crowd. After McCormick Field, he'll be leaving and going to Charlotte via Chimney Rock. His train will be in Charlotte waiting to take him back to D.C. Be some whistle stops on the way back up, a few more speeches and everything. With President Roosevelt on the way back to Washington, well, in Washington, it means Mr. Bridges get back down to the business of sightseeing and touring. The rest of September will be good. The leaf colors are beginning to change, and October will be really good. Leaf lookers be coming to western North Carolina and East Tennessee, and he will close the season out with a good time. Let's take a look at the 1937 fleet that he has to work with. Here's the Smoky Mountain Tours Packards parked in front of the Grove Arcade building where their office is located. Well, let's take a look at these Packards. First two you have here, 1934 models with a Super 8, 17 passenger. Continue on to the right here, this is the new kid, 1937 11.5C, it was 6-cylinder. Then you got 1936 with a 12-cylinder, 35 12 cylinders, and a 36 year, and the older year, 28. Now on the far right here, we have three Packards. These 1931 or 30s. They're with the Super 8s. He had a great fleet of Packards. In the late 1880s, James Packard bought him a car. It gave him a lot of problems. He took it back to the factory and demanded to be fixed. They kind of said, "But if you think you can do better, do it yourself." Well, guess what? That's what he did. James Packard, along with his brother, William, in 1899 started making the Packard car. Their goal was dependability, not flashiness, not show. They built one of the most dependable cars there was, and they kept being more and more dependable. As went along, they got to be known as the Rolls-Royce of America. W.F. Bridges had already found out about their dependability was with Red Top Taxi and Red Top Tours. He stuck with them. At the end of the tour season, W.F. Bridges took off traveling, taking his brochures. Here's pictures of some old brochures he had, giving them to the travel agents that the people sent the tourists to him. He stayed in good contact with them, did a lot of business with the Greyhound Highway Tours. They had a little setup there. You go about any bus station, you can buy a whole vacation right there. Here's a couple pristine Packards owned by a man in western North Carolina. They're to there at that time, and they're in immaculate condition. Boy, a lot of people love to keep these old Packards around. President Roosevelt is arriving at Newfound Gap now for the dedication of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. There he's in his car. Following behind there is the press car provided by Smoky Mountain Tours. The governor of North Carolina and the governor of Tennessee will be making speeches. The governor of South Carolina is there in attendance. Secretary of the Interior Ike will also be speaking along with several others. There's approximately 10,000 people that have showed up for the dedication. As Roosevelt begins his speech, we see he's beginning to prepare America for war, possibly. I will be quoting portions of Roosevelt's speech here, but not in entirety, so we'll take a little segment here and there. Here in the Great Smoky Mountains, we meet today to dedicate these mountains, streams, and forests to the service of millions of American people. We're living under governments which are proving their dedication and devotion to national parks. The governors of North Carolina and Tennessee have greatly helped us, and Secretary of Interior today ready for the dedication of 2 more parks, Kings Canyon in California and Olympia National Park in the state of Washington. And soon we hope we'll have a 3rd, Big Bend Park in Texas. There are trees that stood here before our forefathers came to this continent. There are brooks that will run as clear on the day the first pioneer cupped his hands and took a drink from them. In this park we shall conserve the pine, the redwood, the dogwood, the azalea, the rhododendron, the trout, and the brush, for the happiness of the American people. That hewing was hard. The dangers were many. The rifle could not be far from the axe. The pioneers stood on their feet, got their own game, and fought off their own enemies. In the time of incident or misfortune, they helped each other. In time of Indian attack, they stood by each other. Today, we no longer face Indians and hard and lonely struggles with the future. But also, we have grown fit in many ways. If we are to survive, we cannot be soft in a world which there are dangers that threaten Americans. Danger far more deadly than were the frontiersmen had to face. Therefore, to meet the threat, to ward off those dangers, the Congress of the United States and chief executives are establishing by law the obligation inherent in our citizenship to serve our forces for defense through training in many capacities. It is not in every case easy or pleasant to ask men of the nation to leave their homes and the women of the nation to give their men to the service of the nation. But the men and the women of America have never held back, even when it is meant personal sacrifice on their part, if the sacrifice is for the common good. We must prepare in thousands of ways. Men are not enough. We must have arms. We must learn how to use those arms. We must have skilled leaders who in turn must be trained. New bases must be established, enable to our fleets to defend our shores. Men and women must be taught to create supplies that we need. We must counter the agents of the dictators within our country. There is, moreover, another enemy at home. The enemy is that mean and petty spirit that mocks ideas, sneers at the sacrifice, pretends that American people can live by bread alone. If the Spirit of God is not in us, and if we do not prepare to give all that we are to preserve our Christian civilization in our own land, we shall go to destruction. What shall we be defending? The good earth of this land, our homes, our families, yes, and far more. We shall defend a way of life which has given more freedom to the soul and body of man than has ever been realized in the world before. A way of life that let man scale whatever heights he can without hurting his fellows. A way of life that lets man hold their heads and admit to no master but God. The wind that blows through the wide skies of these mountains, the wind that sweeps from Canada to Mexico, from the Pacific to the Atlantic, always has blown on free men. We are free today if we join together now, men, women, and children. The face of common miles, as a united people, we shall be free tomorrow. And so, to the free people of America, I dedicate this park. President Roosevelt had a valid reason to speak so much to the people about being prepared to defend our country. A year ago, on September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. On September 3rd, Britain and France declared war on Germany. September the 17th, the Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east side. April the 9th, 1940, Germany invades Denmark and Norway. May the 10th, Germany invades Belgium, Netherlands, and France. June the 22nd, 1940, France surrendered, signing an armistice agreement with Germany, leaving only England to defend freedom. This is the view that Roosevelt could enjoy today from where he gave his speech and dedication. After the dedication, he was back to business. You can see one of Smoky Mountain's Packards here at Newfound Gap, just like usual. Got real busy around this season, and the last couple of years had been busy too. Every now and then, Mr. Bridges had to rent a bus and put more people on them. He rented a lot from Mars Hill Weaverville bus line. That was kind of the go-to people. In the late 60s, I was visiting with Von Holcomb out there. I'd worked for him for a while too. I was with Smoky Mountain Tours at the time, and he told me how much he liked working with Mr. Bridges. Mr. Bridges always paid the rate and didn't ask for no commission back. On May the 17th, 1941, early afternoon, Mr. Bridges and one of his drivers, Tom Rowland, left the Asheville office on the way to Knoxville, Tennessee, where he maintained an office there. Before reaching the top of Newfound Gap, their car had ignition problems and broke down there. You know the video is going uphill just away from where the accident took place, but you can get an idea of the curves they were having to negotiate. Mr. Rowland stayed with the car while Mr. Bridges picked up a ride with Alan Bird, 32, of Hartsville, South Carolina. When they started down the mountain, also they had Harry Weisenhut from Hazleville with them. As they drove down the mountain, the brakes started smoking. Later the brakes failed and they were unable to get the car back in gear. Mr. Bird made several turns there at a high rate of speed. Finally, he ended up in a drainage ditch. Once from the Civilian Conservation Corps, Camp Number 411, which is just below where the accident occurred, came along and picked up the injured men and took them to the CCC Camp Emergency Treatment. The ambulance transported them to Harris Hospital in Silva, where a short time later, Mr. Bridges passed away. L.S. Bridges is named head Smoky Mountain Tours Company. Bridges, formerly Secretary and Treasurer of Smoky Mountain Tours, has been named president. He's the son of the late operator W.F. Bridges, who was killed in an automobile accident. July the 1st, 1941, L.S. Bridges, president of Smoky Mountain Tours Company, has announced the purchase of a Super 8 160 horsepower 12-passenger Packard special-built car. He drove it back from the plant in Freeport, Illinois this week and brought it back to Asheville. The large bus is the finest of its kind, cost about $6,000. Well, several of the management came out to see it as it left. Off the 12 that manufactured, this is the last one and the only one with a rollback top for sightseeing. The others ended up pretty much airport limousines. One is on display in Warren, Ohio. L.S. Bridges kind of let the word out Smoky Mountain Tours might be for sale. Well, the word got to Jack Priedeman up in Cleveland, Ohio. He was a graduate of Cornell University back in 1929, went to work for Greyhound in Chicago. He worked in the travel business. They sent him to Cleveland, Ohio, where he set up the office there, and he really started Greyhound Highway Tours. With the business they conducted with each other, they became friends and pretty well known. Jack was sending a lot of people down to Smoky Mountain Tours, and of course Mr. Bridges appreciated it. Mr. Priedeman heard about the possibility of Smoky Mountain being for sale. He made contact with them. Then between letters and phone calls, they negotiated a price. On Sunday, December the 7th, they signed the deal. After that, the Priedemans checked into the Battery Park Hotel, went to the room. In the early afternoon, the news came in on WWNC. The Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. Bridges would continue running the business and the operation. Priedemans would be moved to the Asheville area in February of 1942. They moved to the Fairview area on February 19th, 1942. The newspaper has an article about Mr. Bridges, L.S. Bridges. He's been traveling with James A. Patrick of Travel Talk, part of Mustard and Golden Mares. He's been helping pick out the spots for the colorful North Carolina, which is premiering that same day at the Imperial Theater. Mr. and Mrs. L.S. Bridges resigned their position at Smoky Mountain Tours. Jack Preedham becomes president. Glenn Snipes becomes secretary. Thomas Alexander remains as vice president. Arthur Wolf, head of the Wolf Travel Service in Chicago and proprietor of Snowbird Mountain Lodge on Lake Santilli in Graham County, said yesterday that he is optimistic about tourism in western North Carolina and most all the Great Smoky Mountains. Mr. Wolf arrived in Asheville yesterday with his wife. Most of the Chicago travel bureaus will be conducting tours to the Smoky Mountains this summer. He said persons traveling with Wolf's Travel Service will be brought to Asheville and Knoxville by train, then taken to the Smokies by Smoky Mountain Tours. Smoky Mountain Tours Company, which operates over western North Carolina, mostly Great Smoky Mountain National Park, will suspend operations now to September the 9th, since the use of rubber on cars, which will be prohibited by the Office of Defense Transportation, effective September the 10th, officials of the company announced today. The company has been operating this summer, but had been cut back for restrictions to no more than 7 passengers on a car. The ban isn't just on the sightseeing buses, it's on taxis, private cars, and anything can do it. In other words, you're not going to take a ride, just go rubbernecking and looking around. Taxis are limited on what they can do. For instance, can no longer pick up passengers whose sole interest is just to engage a sightseeing ride. The Smoky Mountain Tour Company here has become affiliated with the Great Line Sightseeing Association, according to J.H. Preedman, president and general manager. Mr. Preedman said while his company is inactive at this time, Mr. Preedman felt that the association with the Great Line would be good for the tourist area here in Asheville, western North Carolina, and the Great Smoky Mountain National Park for the post-war touring period patronage. The Great Line Association, a group of major sightseeing companies in the United States and Canada, has no voice in the management nor ownership in its member companies. Its primary function is advertising behalf of the member companies' promotional. On August the 6th, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. August the 9th, knocked one on Nagasaki. August 12th, Japan decides they will surrender. This opens things up again to travel. So Mr. Preedham's busy getting his fleet back to Asheville, checking it out. He's got 2 vehicles he can use to do tours with. So on August the 30th, he announces September the 1st, he will be operating 2 tours. Smoky Mountain Tours is back in business. However, some of their fleet, well, they're not as good as should be. Tires worn out, spare tires missing, little transmission problems here and there, but he's operating into November with the tours. He'll be starting his trip to see the Greyhound travel people and the other travel agents. He's got buddies there he's going to be talking to and going to try to bring some more business to the mountains. While he's taking his brochures, he's got his pickup truck and he's busy hunting in the junkyards, transmissions, and other parts for the Packards. On January 24th of 1946, Jack Preedman, president of Smoky Mountain Tours, announced Wilson Dvorak of Cleveland, Ohio, will be the assistant manager of Smoky Mountain Tours. Mr. Dvorak just recently got discharged from the Army. He had been in India in transportation over there. Came out at the rank of a captain. He had previously worked with Greyhound Lines in the highway tours. And I can tell you one thing, working Wilson Dvorak, he's a cool, calm, collective, excellent at organization. A great guy to work with. Smoky Mountain Trailways out of Asheville, North Carolina, with the large bus operators out of Asheville. Well, they're promoting the idea of trips to Gatlinburg. One way, 207 to Gatlinburg, 213 all the way to Knoxville, 374 for a round trip to Gatlinburg back to Asheville. Yep, buses go to Knoxville, turn around and come back. You can catch them again in Gatlinburg and come back. There's a big difference between just a bus ride over to Gatlinburg and a tour over there. On Smoky Mountain Tours, you're not just riding over there. You have a knowledgeable tour guide explaining the area to you, the history, the botany, and the beauty. You're stopping at overlooks, and you're having time to soak it up and enjoy it. Now, Smoky Mountain stages, yep, they took you over there, good company. If you wanted a bus ride, they're all right. You wanted a tour, you wanted Smoky Mountain Tours. '47, '48, and '49 kind of roll together here a little bit. They come growing and growing each year. He had to buy extra equipment, ended up with 28 vehicles one time, and with the country on the move, he was adding new tours, the Parkway Tour, going up to Roanoke, Waynesboro, multi-day trips between Knoxville. In 1949, Jack Priedman made a big move. He bought 3 motor coaches, glass tops, and started to put them in service in 1950. 2 flexible coaches, number 101 and 102, 33 passenger buses with a glass top. The air coach was a 37 passenger bus, and yes, 1950 they were rolling. In the 50s here, we see Smoky Mountain Tours growing. We already see we had got 3 coaches there, put in service 1950. 152, he adds another air coach, a 41 passenger this time, glass top. Roll around to 54, he gets 2 flexibles, 25 passenger buses, mostly run to Mount Mitchell. In 1955, he gets another one, a 1955 Fitzjohn, looks like a 4104. Well, personally, I think the front end of it looks better than 4104. 41 passenger. 57, he gets another flexible, another 25 passenger one. This one happened to be a flexible demo bus. Also in 1957, he gets another 41 passenger, another Fitzjohn, just like the other one. These were good sightseeing buses. 1955, we said goodbye to number 25. Last of the Packards had delivered was now all service. In 2015, it was sold at a car auction. Nobody seems to know what happened to it after that time. If you do, let us know. 1957 to 1959, along in there, seemed like the tourist and sightseeing business was peaking out. Well, guess what? Hollywood came to town. They came in the area to make a movie about another industry that was about peaked out and going down. Moonshining. Hit its peak in 57, 58, and 59. Made the movie Thunder Road with Robert Mitchum and Gene Barry. In the opening scenes of the movie, you see an agent trying to catch a transporter here by grabbing his bumper. Well, the transporter, wise enough, have a release took away. Well, a lot of people said they didn't have no such thing as a bumper grabber. Well, tell you what, let me tell you the story. I won't use any real names, but a Deputy Sheriff Tom, Montgomery County Sheriff's Department, he had a bumper grabber put on his car. Anyway, he's chasing a speeder down through Emma, pretty much about 90 miles an hour, he said. Well, he snatched over to this transporter here, and the transporter had more horsepower than Tom had brakes. He carried him through Emma and down Louisiana Avenue around the turns, and, well, finally the bumper snatcher, it kind of broke off, went up under the cruiser, and all he could do was keep from wrecking it. Well, the transporter got away that night. Tom junked his grabber. Hollywood liked the area. Hannibal was made there in 2001, The Fugitive in 1993, Dirty Dancing 1987, Hunger Games 2012, The Last of the Mohicans 1992, and Forrest Gump 1994. They wasn't entirely filmed there, but a good portion were filmed in the mountains. At 10 years of age, I started catching the bus and going to town by myself. Oh, I go sometimes to the A&P store and get groceries for Grandma and like that. Well, from 10 to 12, I started roaming the streets. And I remember seeing those glass-top buses with the guy up there driving with a microphone hanging down at him telling everything back. I sure didn't want to ride one of those buses, but I never did get to. Here the Battery Park Hotel was the starting point. Pull the coaches around front here, load it up, and take the various trips. Grove Arcade buildings across the street from it. Well, I did get to drive them, though. Well, this came about one day I was hanging around the bus station. I was wanting to change jobs. I was doing power line construction. Really didn't like being around with the drunken crew. Guy I knew looked at me and said, well, you were a radio announcer. You drove a bus. Why don't you go to Smoky Mountain Tours? I thought about it. I made a straight line up to the Battery Park Hotel and spoke with Wilson Dvorak. We talked a little bit. Although I was a young kid, he decided to take me on. Right now you're looking at some of the scenery around the area, and that's why the people came. I think at this point I'll just give you a montage and pictures and video that mostly I have taken and let you see what it'd be like to be on a Smoky Mountain tour someplace in the area. Let's kind of start with Biltmore House. That's one of the most popular things around Asheville. Here you're looking at Mount Pisgah and the rats. See the rats sneaking up on the mountain? All that used to be part of the Biltmore estate. I was there one time, the second floor. One of their guides, somebody asked, what was that out there? She didn't know. I looked. Oh, that used to be the outdoor swimming pool. Look at the backside of the house. Hey, they had great views in the backside of the house, looking into the mountain. If you come here, come to the gardens in the greenhouse. Oh, man, the variety there. By the way, this greenhouse actually makes money. They have some very rare orchids in the greenhouse. Hey, just take a look around at some of the pictures I took when I was there on a trip before. When you come to the library, you'll find over 20,000 volumes in here in different languages. Mr. Vanderbilt was fluent in at least 6 different languages. There are a lot of beautiful waterfalls in western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. This is one of them here, Dry Falls. We came up Highway 64 out of Franklin, always come uphill on the falls, look better that way. This is unique, the Dry Falls. Here at Dry Falls, you can walk under it and not really worry about getting wet. Nearby is another one called Bridalveil Falls. I actually took an Eagle bus under it one time. They've got a rock slide there now. You can hardly get a motorcycle under it. A little video I took up around Cashiers, just a little ways up in Dry Falls. Hope you enjoyed it. One of the most popular tours was our Smoky Mountain one-day tour out of Asheville. This is where we just gone Blue Ridge Parkway after coming through Maggie Valley and up Highway 19. Yeah, we got some tunnels on this part of it. The narration I'll be giving now is a whole lot what I gave on the Smoky Mountain tours when I was a tour guide for them and driver. Along this area here, it goes around the upper part of the Cherokee Indian Reservation. Oh, look what we have here. We took a little stop at Raven Overlook, and we got us an eagle floating around. Let's take a couple of minutes to enjoy this. Over 200 species of birds are found in the Smoky Mountain area. There are those who migrate all the way from South America and Central America up here to nest and have families during the summer and migrate back in the fall and winter. This is milepost 469, the end of the Blue Ridge Parkway, crossing over the old Conalufty River. At the intersection up here, we'll swing right and up to the old Conlufty Visitor Center. Just barely outside of Cherokee as we're into the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. 800 square miles, plus a little. We will be taking a break here at the Visitor Center. This is one of the biggest ecosystems in the world, and it's all by nature. God created this, and you can enjoy the beauty of it. 67 native fish to the area, 65 mammal species, and 80 plus reptile and amphibious species. 37 they know of salamanders, different type. This is salamander capital of the world. As we approach the visitor center, look over to your right. You see a farmstead down there. All these buildings there, at one time they were someplace in the park. They've been brought here and reassembled in a farm area. Walk down there, take a look at them, see them, wrong. Then don't forget to come back to the visitor center up here. This is the way the visitor center looked when we were doing tours here. This is the front side. We'll go around back now. We're going to take a look there. That's where you had to go to use the restrooms. This is now part of the Park Administrative Office on the North Carolina side. Well, we're climbing up. We're getting a little over 5,000 feet drop here in a little bit. We'll give you a little break here at Newfound Gap. Looking over to the right now, you look down the Carolina view there, 441, which we've been winding up to get to the top of the mountain here. It is this point, on September 2nd, 1940, President Franklin D. Roosevelt dedicated the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. He spoke of the beauty of it and the transition the world was making and our country was making. He also gave a lot of warning about we would probably be in war, telling the country to be prepared for it, while he dedicated this park to the nation and to the people. We'll head down the Tennessee side now. Well, what we're going to come up on right now is what is known as the Loop. I jokingly tell the people this is where we had to tie the highway in a knot to keep the mountain from sliding down. As you see, we continually make one turn all the way around, and yep, we come under ourselves, or if you're coming up, you come over yourself coming back. See, we've made the circle now. Still going down. I'm just going to barely go into Gatlinburg. We'll take a little glance into Tennessee right now. We're going into Gatlinburg, and we're not going to hang around here today. Hey, it got too crowded. We used to come in here and park down here and go to the Gables restaurant to eat. It closed out in 1968. Yep, there's a couple of them there before. Oh, look at the mountain streams we have here. It is really easy to enjoy a little bit of nature here. And guess what? We actually have found a bear here. People always want to see the bear. Oh, there's probably about 1,900 bear in the national park here. They roam all over western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. You didn't even see them downtown Asheville on the streets in Gatlinburg. Yeah, I got close enough to get a deer or two here. Guess what? Another little bear here. Here are some views from Clingman's Dome. Clingman's Dome is the highest peak in the park. It's the third highest in the eastern United States, 6,643 feet. Hope you enjoyed a little bit of a window view. This is something you probably would have seen from one of the coaches here. We're staying pretty much on the right side. We're coming down on the North Carolina side right now as we return back to Cherokee and eventually back to Asheville. Hope you liked the scenery. God did some great work there, didn't he? Give thanks. We'll see you later. Take care and enjoy the view.